The stars outside the window looked like scattered diamonds against black velvet. Ambassador Park stood near the observation deck of the diplomatic vessel Horizon's Grace, her hands folded behind her back. She had spent 18 months working toward this moment. 18 months of arguments, proposals, and sleepless nights. Today, all of that work would finally pay off. They were coming. Turned when she heard footsteps behind her. Captain walked toward her with his usual calm expression. He was a tall man with broad shoulders and eyes that never seemed to rest. Even now, in this moment of supposed triumph, he was scanning the room for threats. "The shuttle has docked," said. "They will be in the conference chamber in 10 minutes. Nodded, "And your security team?" Standing down as ordered. His jaw tightened slightly. "All weapons have been secured in the armory. We are showing them that we trust them." "That is the point, Captain. Peace cannot be built on suspicion." Said nothing. He had served in 3 border conflicts over the past decade. He had watched friends die under plasma fire. Trust was not something he could give easily to creatures that had killed so many of his people. But he was a soldier, and soldiers followed orders. The conference chamber was the largest room on the ship. Long tables had been arranged in a circle, with seats for both human and delegates. Flowers from Earth decorated the center of the room, their soft colors meant to create a welcoming atmosphere. Everything had been planned carefully to send a message of friendship. The delegation entered through the main doors. There were 12 of them, led by High Speaker Os. They were tall and thin, with bodies covered in smooth gray skin. Large compound eyes dominated their faces, and translucent wings folded against their backs. They moved with a strange grace, their long fingers gesturing as they spoke to each other in their clicking language. Os approached with his arms spread wide in the gesture of greeting. His voice came through a translator device on his collar. "Ambassador Park," he said warmly, "this is a historic day. Our peoples have been enemies for too long. Today we become brothers." Smiled and returned the greeting. "High Speaker, humanity welcomes you in peace. May this treaty mark the beginning of a new era." The ceremony that followed lasted 3 hours. There were speeches and promises. Both sides talked about the wars of the past and the hope of the future. Documents were signed. Hands were shaken. Recorded everything and broadcast the images across 100 worlds. Billions of beings watched as humans and declared eternal friendship. When it was over, Os clasped his hand one final time. "You have done a great thing today, Ambassador," he said. "Your children and your children's children will remember this moment. Peace will be your legacy." Felt tears in her eyes. She had given everything for this dream. Now it was real. That night, the human crew celebrated in the mess hall. Someone had brought out bottles of rice wine that had been saved for a special occasion. Music played from the speakers, and crew members danced between the tables. Laughter filled the air for the first time in months. Lieutenant did not join the celebration. She sat alone in the security hub, watching her monitors with tired eyes. Something felt wrong to her, though she could not explain what it was. Call it instinct. Call it paranoia. Whatever it was, it would not let her rest. She noticed something strange on one of her screens. The shuttle was sending encrypted transmissions. The signals were tight and focused, directed toward the fleet waiting at the edge of the system. Frowned. This was supposed to be a moment of openness. Why would the need to send secret messages? She began running a decryption program, but before it could finish, her screens flickered. The lights in the hub dimmed for a moment, then went out completely. In the darkness, heard a sound that made her blood turn cold. It was the distant shriek of plasma weapons firing. Then the screaming began. In the mess hall, the celebration died in an instant. Crew members who had been laughing moments before now lay on the floor, smoke rising from holes in their chests. Soldiers poured through the doors, their weapons spitting bolts of blue fire. Ambassador Park ran into the corridor, trying to reach the bridge. She had to send a warning. She had to tell someone what was happening. She never saw the soldier behind her. The plasma bolt struck her in the back, burning through her spine. She fell forward, her face hitting the cold metal floor. The last thing she saw was a soldier stepping over her body, not even bothering to look down. Captain was in his quarters when the attack began. He heard the weapons fire through the walls. He heard the screams of dying crew members. In 30 seconds, he had armed himself with a combat knife from his personal locker. The armory was locked. Their weapons were sealed away. They had shown trust and had answered with betrayal. Felt something shift inside him. The calm soldier disappeared. Something older and darker took his place. Something that humanity had carried in its blood since the first caveman picked up a rock to defend his family. The wanted war. They were about to learn what that word truly meant. The corridor was filled with smoke and the smell of burning flesh. Captain moved through the darkness like a shadow, his combat knife gripped tight in his hand. Emergency lights flickered red above him, painting everything in the color of blood. He found his first soldier around the corner. The alien was standing over the body of a young ensign, laughing at something another soldier had said. They did not hear approach. They did not see his knife until it was already buried in the first soldier's throat. The second soldier tried to raise his weapon but was faster. He grabbed the alien's arm and twisted it until bones cracked. The screamed, a high-pitched sound that hurt human ears, silenced him with a quick thrust to the chest. He picked up both plasma rifles and kept moving. In the security hub, Lieutenant had barricaded the door with heavy equipment cases. Her screen still worked on backup power, and through them, she watched the massacre unfold. They were everywhere. They moved through the ship in organized teams, checking each room and killing everyone they found. Some crew members tried to surrender. They held up their empty hands and begged for mercy. They shot them anyway. Watched a group of medical staff dragged out of the sickbay. The doctors had been treating delegates just hours ago, sharing knowledge and medicine in the spirit of cooperation. Now those same stood and watched as soldiers lined the doctors against a wall and executed them one by one. Something broke inside, not her spirit, something else. Some barrier that had always held back the darker parts of her nature. She felt it crack and fall away, leaving only cold calculation behind. She opened a ship-wide communication channel. Her voice came through every speaker on the vessel. All surviving crew, this is Lieutenant, they have broken the treaty. They are killing everyone. Do not surrender. Do not beg. Fight back with everything you have. Make them pay for every step they take. Fight back. Her words spread through the dying ship like fire through dry wood. In the cargo bay, Chief Petty Officer heard the message. She was hiding behind a stack of supply crates with 11 other crew members. They had no weapons. They had only the tools they used for their daily work. Looked at the welding torch in her hand. She looked at the faces of her crew, young men and women who had never expected to fight. "You heard the lieutenant," she said quietly. "We are not going to die on our knees." They found them minutes later. 40 soldiers surrounded the cargo bay, their weapons ready. They expected the humans to surrender. Humans always surrendered when they were outnumbered. Stood up from behind the crates. She held a welding torch in each hand, blue flames hissing from their tips. "Come and get us," she said. Then she charged. What followed was not a battle. It was butchery. The humans threw themselves at them with the fury of cornered animals, burned through 3 soldiers before they could react. A young technician named swung a heavy wrench into an alien skull. An engineer used a fire extinguisher to blind a group of soldiers, then beat them to death with the empty container. They killed 8 of the 12 humans, but the humans killed 23. When reinforcements arrived, they found their soldiers scattered across the cargo bay floor, their bodies broken and burned. They had never seen anything like it. They had conquered dozens of species across the galaxy. Most of those species had been peaceful. They had surrendered when faced with superior force, accepting their fate with quiet dignity. Humans were different. In engineering, Sergeant Han Minyu listened to the sounds of fighting echo through the ship. He was alone, surrounded by the machines that powered the vessel. He knew every system, every pipe, every conduit. This was his domain. A group of soldiers entered engineering, searching for survivors. Minyu hid behind a reactor housing and watched them spread out through the room. He smiled. His fingers moved across a control panel, entering commands he had memorized years ago. The ship's plasma venting system activated, but instead of releasing gas into space, it redirected the superheated plasma through the internal conduits. They had 3 seconds to understand what was happening. Then the plasma flooded 3 decks, burning everything it touched. The screams lasted only a moment before they were silenced by fire. On the bridge, High Speaker Os received reports from his soldiers. His compound eyes blinked rapidly as he processed the information. "What do you mean they are fighting back?" he demanded. "They have no weapons." "They do not need weapons, High Speaker. They are using tools, fists, teeth. They bit off Soldier N's fingers before he died." Os felt something he had not experienced in many years. It took him a moment to recognize it as fear. He had studied humans before planning this attack. He had read about their diplomacy, their desire for peace, their willingness to negotiate. He had concluded that they were a soft species, easy to crush once their guards were down. He had not studied their history of war. He did not know about the sieges they had survived, the last stands they had fought, the enemies they had destroyed through sheer stubborn refusal to die. He was beginning to learn. The horizon's grace had become a maze of death. Every corridor held danger. Every shadow could hide a killer. But now they were no longer the only hunters. Captain had killed 14 soldiers in the past hour. He moved through the ship like a vengeful ghost, appearing from darkness and disappearing before reinforcements could arrive. He had collected 4 plasma rifles, 2 pistols, and enough power cells to fight a small war. He found survivors along the way. Some were injured, some were in shock. He gathered them all, gave them weapons, and taught them to kill. "Aim for the joints," he told them, pointing to the places where armor was weakest. "Their eyes are sensitive to bright light. Their wings are attached to their spine. Damage the wings and they cannot control their balance." A young woman named O looked at the plasma rifle in her hands. She was a cook. She had never held a weapon before today. "I do not know if I can do this," she said quietly. Knelt before her and met her eyes. "They killed your friends. They shot Ambassador Park in the back while she was running for help. They laughed while they did it." His hand stopped shaking. Her eyes grew hard. "Teach me," she said. In the security hub, Lieutenant had become the brain of the human resistance. She watched every camera that still worked. She tracked movements through heat signatures and audio sensors. When she found enemy soldiers, she directed human survivors to intercept them. "Sergeant Han, there are 12 soldiers heading toward engineering. They are taking the maintenance tunnel on Deck 7. Minyu's voice came back through the communicator. "I see them. I have redirected the coolant exhaust to that tunnel. They will walk into a cloud of frozen nitrogen, should slow them down." "Do more than slow them down." "Understood." "Switch to another channel. Chief, what is your status?" His voice was rough with exhaustion. She had been fighting for hours without rest. "4 of us left. We have secured the auxiliary armory, found some emergency weapons they did not know about." "Good, hold that position. I am sending Captain to you with reinforcements." The tide was beginning to turn. They had expected this mission to be easy. Attack a diplomatic ship with no weapons, kill the soft humans, blame the whole thing on pirates or mechanical failure. No one would ever know the truth. Instead, they were dying. High Speaker Os paced the bridge. his wings twitching with anxiety. More than 100 of his soldiers were dead. The humans had taken control of several key areas of the ship. Every attempt to reclaim those areas ended in disaster. "Send a message to the fleet," he ordered. "Tell them we need reinforcements immediately." His communications officer worked the controls with trembling fingers. "High Speaker, the humans have done something to our signals. Our transmissions are being blocked." Oz turned to face the officer. "What do you mean blocked?" "They have taken control of the ship's communication array. They are allowing some signals through but not others. We cannot reach our fleet." In the security hub, allowed herself a small smile. She had learned the communication protocols from the earlier encrypted transmissions. Now she was using that knowledge against them. She opened a new channel, this one broadcast on all frequencies. "Attention all vessels in this sector. This is the human diplomatic ship Horizon's Grace. We have been attacked by forces during a peace ceremony. They fired on unarmed civilians. They shot our ambassador in the back." She paused, checking her screens. The broadcast was going out to every ship, every station, every planet within range. "They thought we would die quietly. They were wrong." Captain reached the auxiliary armory and joined forces with his group. Together, they had 11 fighters and enough weapons to arm a small platoon. "What is the plan?" asked. Checked his rifle's power cell. "We take back the ship section by section. We drive them toward the bridge, then we finish this. And if they get reinforcements from their fleet." Smiled, it was not a pleasant expression. "Sergeant Han has sealed every airlock with emergency protocols. Nothing gets in or out without his authorization. This ship is a cage now." Nodded slowly. "A cage for them. A cage for all of us. But we are used to cages. We have been fighting our way out of them since we first crawled out of caves. They have conquered species that surrendered when things got hard. They have never faced a species that gets stronger the more you hurt it." The humans began their advance. They moved through the ship like a wave of fury, clearing each section before moving to the next. They showed no mercy because they had been shown none. They fought in silence, saving their breath for killing. They fell back. For the first time in their long history of conquest, they were the ones running. They were the ones hiding in corners and praying for rescue. They were the ones who looked into the darkness and saw death looking back. The hunters had become the prey. High Speaker Oz stood on the bridge of the Horizon's Grace and watched his empire crumble around him. Reports came in every few minutes, each one worse than the last. His soldiers were dead or dying. The humans controlled most of the ship. Reinforcements could not get through the sealed airlocks. He had come here expecting an easy victory. He would leave as either a prisoner or a corpse. "High Speaker," one of his officers said, "the human broadcast is being received across the entire sector. Dozens of worlds are watching. Our own colonies are asking for explanations." Oz closed his eyes. The attack had been meant to stay secret. A quick strike, a dead crew, and a convenient story about an accident. Now the whole galaxy knew the truth. "Can we jam their signal?" "No, High Speaker. They control the communication systems. They are broadcasting everything." In the security hub, Lieutenant had done something simple but devastating. She had connected every remaining camera on the ship to the outgoing broadcast. Billions of beings across dozens of worlds were watching the battle in real time. They saw soldiers executing wounded humans. They saw humans fighting back with impossible fury. They saw the broken bodies of diplomats who had come in peace. They saw everything. Spoke into her microphone, narrating the massacre for her audience. "What you are seeing is not a battle. It is a betrayal. They signed a peace treaty with us. They smiled and shook our hands. Then they tried to murder us in our sleep." She switched to a camera showing the corridor where Ambassador Park had fallen. Her body still lay where she had died, face down in a pool of dried blood. This was our ambassador. She gave 18 months of her life to build peace between our peoples. They shot her in the back while she ran for help. She never had a chance to defend herself. Across the galaxy, beings of 100 different species watched in horror. Some had dealt with the before. Some had considered treaties of their own. Now they saw what promises were truly worth. Captain led his small army toward the bridge. They had fought through 6 decks, leaving a trail of bodies behind them. Only 7 humans remained from the original 11, but they had killed more than 50 enemies. "Captain," Sergeant Hand's voice came through the communicator, "I am detecting movement from the fleet. 3 ships are breaking formation and heading toward us." Did not slow his advance. Can they dock? Not while I control the airlocks, but they could destroy us from outside. They will not. Not while their high speaker is still aboard. They will try to negotiate. He was right. Minutes later, a voice crackled through the ship's speakers. "Humans aboard the Horizon's Grace, this is Fleet Commander Han. You are surrounded by our warships. Surrender immediately, and you will be treated as prisoners of war. Continue fighting, and we will destroy your vessel." Connected the incoming transmission to the outgoing broadcast. Now the whole galaxy could hear the threats. Took the communicator. "Fleet Commander, this is Captain of the Terran Defense Force. Your people broke a sacred treaty. You murdered unarmed civilians during a peace ceremony. You shot our ambassador in the back." He paused, letting his words sink in. "We are not going to surrender. We are not going to beg. We are going to take back this ship, and we are going to make your high speaker answer for what he has done. If you destroy us, you will do it in front of the entire galaxy. Every species will see exactly what honor means." There was a long silence from the fleet. Continued his advance. The bridge doors were sealed and reinforced, but Sergeant Han had studied this ship for years. He knew every weakness, every override code, every maintenance passage. "Captain, there is an access panel on Deck 3 that connects to the bridge's environmental systems. I can pump sleeping gas through the vents. It will not affect though their biology is too different, but it will force them to wear breathing masks. The masks will limit their vision." "Do it." 3 minutes later, the bridge filled with white fog. They scrambled for their emergency equipment, their movements clumsy and confused. "Hit the door override." The blast doors opened, and 7 humans charged into the bridge. The fight lasted 11 minutes. It was brutal and personal. Plasma bolts flew in all directions. Bodies fell. Blood, both red and blue, splashed across the deck. When the fog cleared, Captain stood alone among the dead. He was bleeding from wounds on his face, his arm, and his leg. 2 of his fingers were broken, but he was alive. High Speaker Os lay at his feet, alive but unable to move. Both of his wings were shattered. His compound eyes stared up at the human who had destroyed his plans, his soldiers, and his future. "This is impossible," Os whispered. "You were supposed to be weak. You were supposed to die quietly." Looked down at him without expression. "You studied the wrong parts of our history." His voice came through the speakers. "Captain, we have full control of the ship. All enemy forces have been eliminated or captured. The broadcast is still going. The whole galaxy is watching." Looked directly into the nearest camera. "Good," he said. "Let them watch." The galaxy held its breath. 3 warships hung in space around the battered Horizon's Grace. Their weapons were powered and ready to fire. 1 command from Fleet Commander Han, and the human ship would become dust and memories. But Han hesitated. The broadcast had changed everything. Billions of beings had watched the attack unarmed diplomats. They had seen the humans fight back with nothing but tools and fury. They had watched Captain take the bridge with 7 wounded soldiers against 40 armed guards. If Han destroyed the ship now, he would prove everything the humans had said about honor. Every species in the galaxy would see thee as murderers and cowards. Treaties would be broken. Alliances would crumble. The Dominion would face enemies on every border. "Fleet Commander," his tactical officer said, "we are detecting multiple hyperspace signatures at the edge of the system." Han felt his blood turn cold. "Identify them." 17 vessels, sir. They are broadcasting Terran military codes." The human warships dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation. They were not diplomatic vessels. They were battleships, heavy cruisers and carriers filled with fighter craft. Their weapons were already locked onto the fleet. Captain's voice came through the communication channel. "Fleet Commander Han, you have a choice to make. You can fire on this ship and die, or you can stand down and face judgment for what your people have done." Han stared at his tactical display. The human ships outnumbered him. Even if he destroyed the Horizon's Grace, he would not survive the battle that followed. "How?" he demanded. "How did you know to position warships here? The treaty was supposed to ensure peace." His voice was flat and cold. "We hoped for peace. We prepared for betrayal. That is the human way." The fleet powered down its weapons. 3 months later, a new treaty was signed. This one was not negotiated in a conference room. It was dictated from the bridge of a human battleship orbiting The terms were simple. They would pay reparations to the families of every human killed aboard the Horizon's Grace. High Speaker Oz and every officer involved in the attack would stand trial for war crimes. The military would be reduced to a defensive force, unable to threaten their neighbors again. They accepted every term. They had no choice. On Earth, a memorial was built in the center of New Seoul. It was a simple structure, a wall of black stone with names carved into its surface. 97 names. 97 humans who had died because they believed in peace. At the top of the wall, larger than the others, was the name of Ambassador Park. Beneath all the names, a single inscription was carved in letters that would last for centuries. "They promised peace. We delivered justice." The survivors of the Horizon's Grace became heroes. Songs were written about their courage. Their faces appeared on news broadcasts across human space. Children in schools learned about Chief Petty Officer, who had charged 40 soldiers with nothing but welding torches. They learned about Sergeant Han Minyu, who had turned the ship's own systems into weapons. They learned about Lieutenant, who had shown the galaxy the truth. But the survivors did not feel like heroes. They felt like ghosts. They had survived, but they had left pieces of themselves in the blood-stained corridors of the Horizon's Grace. Captain returned to active duty after his wounds healed. He rarely spoke about that night. When reporters asked him for interviews, he refused. When politicians tried to use him for their campaigns, he walked away. Only once did he speak about what had happened. A young cadet approached him at a training facility, nervous and eager. "Captain, sir, I have studied the Battle of Horizon's Grace. It is required reading at the academy now. I wanted to ask you something." Looked at the young man with tired eyes. "Ask." "What did you learn from What lesson should we take from what happened?" Was quiet for a long moment. He thought about Ambassador Park, lying face down in the corridor. He thought about the crew members who had died in the first minutes of the attack, never having a chance to fight back. He thought about the look in High Speaker Oz's eyes when he realized that humans were not the soft prey he had expected. "Never shoot a human in the back," he said finally. "We always turn around." The cadet nodded slowly, not fully understanding. He would learn. They all did eventually. In the years that followed, other species studied what had happened aboard the Horizon's Grace. They analyzed the battle, counted the bodies, and tried to understand how a ship full of unarmed diplomats had defeated a force of trained soldiers. The answer was always the same. Humans were different. Other species fought to survive. Humans fought because they were angry. Other species surrendered when the odds were against them. Humans got more dangerous. Other species accepted death with dignity. Humans spat in its face and dared it to try again. The galaxy learned a valuable lesson that day. Peace with humans was possible. Friendship with humans was possible, but betraying humans was suicide. Some lessons were written in blood. This one was written in fire.